Good morning. Oh, it's so great to see you. It warms my heart for sure. So I think, Charlie, I think we're ready. I hope everyone can hear me okay. Connections are pretty good. Well, we're going to keep crossing our fingers that that's still the case and work through our virtual 20th anniversary celebration of the Community Foundation of Johnson County. Charlie, please kick us off.
Great, thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. It is so great to see you all. My name is Charlie Nusser, and I have the pleasure of being the president of the Community Foundation of Johnson County's Board of Directors. And on behalf of all of our board members, both past and present, we welcome you to our 20th anniversary celebration. It is my sincere hope that this will be the first and only anniversary event we will ever need to hold virtually, but I can promise you this will be a memorable event. To begin where it all started, our Community Foundation was founded in 2000 by visionary community leaders like Dick Schwab, Todd Jacobson, Joan Benson, and someone I not only know personally, but also the person I happened to bring with me to my kindergarten show and tell, my grandfather, Willard Sandy Boyd. Along with these visionaries, there were so many others along the way who believed that by bringing together passionate, generous people from all walks of life to meet the needs of the community, all of our residents would benefit. And I'm happy to say that this belief still holds true today, even during these challenging times. From an initial gift of $400,000 made by Dick Schwab and Catherine Burford on December 1st, 2000, the Community Foundation has grown to oversee over $43 million in charitable assets and has distributed over $20 million in grants to amazing, dedicated, hardworking nonprofit organizations in our community. Although our 20th year has unfolded differently than we had anticipated, we are incredibly grateful to the many donors who have chosen to give through the Community Foundation, both now and over the past 20 years. There's simply no better way to celebrate our 20th anniversary than by continuing to connect those who care with those who need. Now, I'd like to turn things over to Shelly Meharry, our Executive Director.
Good morning, everyone. Again, oh, it's so great to see all of you together. Just reminds me how much I miss seeing all of you in person and how much we value those connections that we get to reestablish when we will be in person again. But seeing all of you together today clearly reminds me of the words that we have been using to describe our community's response to recent challenges, the likes of which we have never seen before. Words like compassionate, resilient, flexible, strong, and generous. To say the least, 2020 has been a very difficult year, especially for our Johnson County nonprofit organizations. From the arts and culture organizations who experienced the complete closures of their venues, to our local food pantries who saw an increased need in services, while also being impacted by the dramatic decrease in volunteers. These are just some of the complex obstacles our nonprofit organizations have had to overcome. Yet at every turn, our community has come together to support one another through innovative partnerships and generous financial support from generous Johnson County members just like you. While the needs have been diverse, a common theme running through this work is what we have been calling the power of yes, which refers to all the good that's created when we all work together to say yes. For example, when there was an urgent need for freshly prepared meals to be distributed to social service agencies, 4 local restaurants, Table to Table, and the City of Iowa City came together to say yes to establish the Food with Love project. Or when the Community Foundation activated our Emergency Response Fund to respond to critical needs created by the pandemic, the Giving Circle 5224 Good and the Have Life Foundation of Johnson County said yes to partnering with the Community Foundation to redirect their own grant funds to support emergent needs in Johnson County. These stories and many more are why today's program is titled A Celebration of the Power of Yes. We certainly didn't have all the answers, and regularly referred to the task of tackling new issues as feeling like we were building the plane while flying it. And in spite of that feeling, we are all doing our very best to make it through because we're finding ways to say yes together. We are always seeking opportunities to add value to our work in our community. And that's value to the communities that we serve, to the relationships with our donors and our fund holders, and to strengthen our community's nonprofits, which is why we chose to add a learning component to our 20th anniversary celebration. It is my sincere honor to introduce today's special guest and keynote speaker, Joan Gary, whom I'm pretty confident knows a thing or two exactly what I mean when saying building the plane while flying it. Joan began her career as part of the management team that launched MTV, back when MTV still played music videos, I'm sure, and also worked as an executive with Showtime Networks. In 1997, Joan left corporate America and was named the executive director of GLAAD, the Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation, one of the largest organizations working for LGBTQ equality. Since leaving GLAAD, Joan has worked as a consultant for hundreds of nonprofit organizations, teaching them with wisdom, her joy, and humor, the keys of nonprofit leadership. Joan's also the founder of the Nonprofit Learning Lab, an instructor at the Annenberg School of Communications at the University of Pennsylvania, where she teaches nonprofit media strategy, and is also a sought-after speaker on nonprofit leadership. Hence why we are so excited to have her with us today. And if all that wasn't enough, Joan is also the best-selling author of the book, Joan Gary's Guide to Nonprofit Leadership, because nonprofits are messy. And excited to share that the second edition of this book is to be released on December 22nd. So Joan will be presenting to us today for about 45 minutes, and then we'll have about 15 minutes for question and answer. So if something spurs your interest, that you have a question or comment, please use the chat function today to put those comments in, and we'll be sure we can circle those back. So Joan, thank you for coming to our celebration today. Welcome to Johnson County, Iowa.
I didn't hit any traffic, which was great. And I heard that you have snow coming later today, so I didn't have to worry about sort of dressing for the weather. And in fact, I don't know what everyone else is wearing from the waist down, and I'm not going to ask. And I'm not going to show you what I'm wearing from the waist down, although Charlie is actually outside, so I'm hoping that he's legitimately dressed. So are you ready for me to get rolling here?
We are ready for you, Joan.
Great. Well, it's actually one of my favorites. So, there are a lot of people that don't like, are sick of Zoom, don't love Zoom. I actually kind of like it. I was using it a lot before the pandemic. So I knew Zoom before the rest of the universe, I think. And it does give you the opportunity to see the faces of the people that you're speaking with in a way that feels really different from a keynote speech. And I wanted to just begin by saying that, first of all, I have a lawn sign on my front yard, and it just says, OMG, please make it stop 2020. And I would like to lift my Diet Coke to all of you who have navigated your way through 2020. So cheers to you. It's really Diet Coke, by the way. If you guys have mimosas because it's a 20th anniversary, God bless you. I also just really want to say that it is hard for me to imagine that you have not been touched by COVID in some personal way, staff or family. I hope that it has not come super, super close to you, but my thoughts are with all of you for how this pandemic has taken its toll on the people that are close to you. I would love, I'm going to use the chat a couple times during the course of this, during the course of my 45 minutes, either to toss into the chat, two things. One is what your organization does. Make it really, really short because it's hard to do a presentation and read chat at the same time. And also a word of how you are feeling right now. How are you feeling right now? It's December of the most challenging year of our lifetimes. So how are you feeling? And just a little bit about your organization. Big brothers, big sisters. I know your organization well. Community building through the arts. This is the part of this presentations that I like the best because it gives me a real sense of the depth and breadth of the work of the 100+ people that have joined here. Court-appointed special advocates, fabulous. Literature, public affairs, rape victims, housing trust. Think about this as you read them as you see the chat, and just like soak that in, that you're part of this tribe. It's really quite remarkable. Girls on the Run, love Girls on the Run. I've done some work with them. Unsure but hopeful. That's pretty good. I'm not seeing anybody that said tired. Yeah, Colleen says she's tired. Let's see. Kelly says she's unsure but hopeful. Tired but hopeful, says Barbara. Tired but happy about new projects. We're going to talk about that, Jean. Yeah, this is great. This is great. Finding my joy. So I haven't actually, Carla from Iowa City Hospice, worn but excited and hopeful. That's pretty good. I like that phrase a lot. So thanks for sharing that. And all through this, you can please use the chat, as Shelley said. If you have a question, we'll grab it somehow or another between Shelley and Ellie. Shelley and Ellie will grab it. If you put a Q at the front of it, that way when I'm finished, if I haven't grabbed it during the presentation, we can go back to it and grab it at the end. And I will do my very best to finish in 45. Oh, look at this. I can read songs, helping young children learn to read and write through songs and movement. Yeah, I like that. Roger says that light at the end of the tunnel ain't Christmas lights or a train, but real hope that things will be getting better. I actually just said to Shelley, I think that the light at the end of the tunnel for 2021 may not be an oncoming train. So, so there. So I wanted to just say thank you to Shelley and to all the folks at the Community Foundation of Johnson County. And as we, I guess as we wind our way through the end of the year, I have been thinking quite a lot about this word leadership and what it means to be a leader. And, we've spent an awful lot of time this year focused on a presidential election. Who will be the next leader of the free world, which, by the way, our world is not feeling all that terribly free in a lot of ways, is it? But in setting our gaze on leaders we elect, or if we look in a more traditional place, I think we miss seeing real leaders. As Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz might say, I don't think we need to look any further than our own backyards, or any further than right there in Johnson County. And when I talk about leaders, I talk about staff, I talk about board, donors, all of you demonstrating what leadership is all about. So let's think about this. We have a little army here in Johnson County, but you're part of a much larger army of leaders all across the country. Think about this. The nonprofit sector represents 10% of the United States employment, 12.3 million jobs. In fact, it's the third largest workforce in the United States after retail and food and before manufacturing. Think about that. 1.5 million nonprofits, from big hospitals to independent schools, institutions of higher ed, to all the organizations that you represent here this morning. If you then factor in boards of directors of, say, conservatively 5 each, that's another 7.5 million senior volunteers. And then maybe another set of 5 volunteers, right? Very conservatively, you've got 15 million volunteers. So paid and unpaid, it's an army of 27 million people. And that doesn't even include the donor leaders in the United States. Now, compare and contrast that with some difficult statistics. 50% of all nonprofits have less than a month's cash reserve. Over 50% of nonprofits are gone within 10 years of securing their 501c3 status. And over half of those will go within a few years for a vast array of reasons. So where do nonprofits get the support that they need? Well, from generous donors, some of whom are here with us today, but in many places, they get that support from community foundations. So, it was a pretty simple premise over 100 years ago in Cleveland, I think, where they asked the question, what if we pool charitable resources in a community to a single great and permanent endowment for the betterment of our community? Pretty simple question with all kinds of implications. And so today, Johnson County, Community Foundation of Johnson County is one of over 800 community foundations that collectively grant more than $6.5 billion and manage more than $82 billion in charitable assets. So these 800 community foundations fuel the nonprofit sector in a big way. And more importantly, they bring the nonprofit sector in their community together. So what Shelley was talking about, right? Connecting those who care with those who are in need. And connecting is the key, isn't it? Recognizing that we're all in this together. I was looking through the annual report that Shelley sent me, and for me, you can never go wrong quoting Mr. Rogers. And so the annual report actually quotes Mr. Rogers. He's actually kind of like my hero. And in the quote that you use is looking for the helpers, that those are the leaders you see. Those are the people. You are the people who provide hope and inspiration. And I think that part of the power of Mr. Rogers comes from how he uses and embraces the word neighbor. The Community Foundation of Johnson County understands the power of neighbors and neighborhoods and the warmth and generosity that's intrinsic in that word, and supporting the work of the nonprofit sector here in Johnson County, creating a stronger, more generous neighborhood that is chock full of leaders just like you. So there you go. You've got a neighborhood of leaders. Yeah, Audrey, the documentary on Fred is really amazing. I should show you. I have a little, he's not exactly a bobblehead doll, but here's my little Mr. Rogers. He's my little spirit animal. You might see with the cardigan sweater and the bow tie, he's also kind of my fashion. He's also my fashion hero also.
So Joan, I have to jump in here and explain. So when we closed down for the pandemic, right, our office closed and our staff came and went from the office separately. I wrote that quote on the whiteboard in my office, which says, look for the helpers, right? When you're scared and there's a crisis, look for the people who are helping. I wrote that on my whiteboard, and it happens to be directly across from Ellie's office. So we have shared that message personally with staff here at the Community Foundation. So I so appreciate that you brought that up. It's been important to us.
I also really want to say that actually, if you know the derivation of that quote, it's actually Fred's mom said that to him when he was a little boy. When things are troublesome, when you're scared, when there's a crisis, look for the helpers. And it really ties back into what I was talking about, which is we can look for leaders in our very own backyard, sometimes at our own kitchen tables. So I wanted to move into some thoughts, some insights, some advice. So I know that a lot of you know that I have a podcast called Nonprofits Are Messy, that my tagline has been Nonprofits Are Messy. My new book, which just actually arrived today at my house. The tagline is because the world is counting on you. We lost the garbage can because we thought perhaps more institutions of higher ed would be more likely to recommend this as a reading assignment for their students if it didn't have a garbage can on it, actually. Although I really like the garbage can. Anyway, I want to talk about what I mean by nonprofits are messy. And then I want to offer you some advice. A little tough love, maybe. Messy is not a pejorative for me. There are really two philosophies that drive the advice that I provide to leaders. One is about this equation of what do I mean about nonprofits are messy? So it's an equation that I talk about, and I call it A plus B plus C plus passion equals messy. So A is modestly, poorly, not paid, definitely overworked staff. That B relies on the efforts of people who get paid nothing, volunteers, and is overseen by C, another group of volunteers, leadership volunteers who have big responsibilities, get paid nothing, and are supposed to give and get lots of money. I don't know who came up with this model, but on its surface, it's a little nutty. And that when you then add to it a dollop of intense passion for each of these missions you have described, that is messy. And it's just important to own it, to acknowledge it, not to use it to let you off the hook, but just to understand that messy is not always a bad thing, and that there are treasures in messiness. Tim Harford has written a book called Messy, and it is actually a really terrific book about innovation, in fact. So that's my first philosophy. Now, my second philosophy is about the structure of nonprofits, which I didn't know much about in 1997. So I want you to think about the standard hierarchical organizational chart, right? You get your board of directors, your executive directors, your staff, you've got volunteers, you've got donors, right? Hierarchical org chart. Can you picture it? Now I want you to unsee it. I want you to unsee it, and I want you instead to imagine a picture of a twin-engine jet. This is the visual that will help you most in thinking about how to ensure that your organization thrives. A board engine, a staff engine, and in the cockpit, the executive director and the board chair. Each of those engines has to be high functioning independently. I can't have one lousy engine. At least I'm not boarding that plane, right? I have to have two solid engines that each have their own work, and I have to have a partnership in the cockpit. It always kind of bothers me when I think about all the press that Sully Sullenberger got for landing the plane in the Hudson River. Sully had a co-pilot, and I guarantee you that Sully could not have landed that plane without his thought partner and co-pilot with him. And I don't know who that person is, and I've wanted to write an article about that person, and it's on my bucket list. But here's why this is valuable, right? Is that we often think of the board as the boss, or executive directors will often think of the board as subservient to them. Do for me, go find money, go raise money, right? It's actually a partnership. The other thing that it does for you is it actually helps you balance things out, if you'll excuse the pun. Carlos de la Rosa is a client of mine, a member of our nonprofit leadership lab, and he said that that reframe was, in fact, a game changer for him. He used to think that he had 14 bosses, and now he thinks he has a co-pilot. And that actually becomes much more manageable, and it puts the relationship between the ED and the co-chair front and center, which I think is the single most important indicator of a healthy nonprofit. So all of these things are lessons that I actually wish that I knew when I became an executive director at the age of 39, which was in 1997. So you can do the math on how old I am, but it was a long time ago now. I didn't actually know what I didn't actually know. And I arrived to an organization that was a financial hot mess. $360 in the bank, $250,000 in ancient accounts payable, and payroll due just around the corner for a staff of 18. So for any of you who have stared at cash flow and sweated bullets, I have stood in your shoes. I know a little bit about crisis. Remember, I ran an LGBT organization, and controversy was front and center at almost everything I did. And I know a lot about you because I actually was you. In fact, I actually know a lot about board members who are here and donors, because there isn't a place on the nonprofit field I have not played. And so based on this, there's a lot I know about you. I know that you're deeply passionate. I know that you're a fierce advocate. I know that you're driven. Can you say type A? I know that you have a little trouble saying no. I like that Shelley has called this conference the power of yes. But I also think that nonprofit leaders have trouble saying no because you're a pleaser. And you have a few control issues, making it a little difficult to delegate or hand things off to volunteers. Can you actually just, if this rings true for you, can you actually put yes, power of yes? Can you put yes in the chat, or the letter A for type A in the chat? So I know whether or not what I'm saying here about your attributes is resonating for all of you. A plus, yep. Triple A, yep. Okay, so I think we're all on the same page here, right? You betcha. I like that, Suzanne. Okay, so one other very important attribute here is that you will do whatever it takes. You will do whatever it takes. And I find that that is admirable, but a double-edged sword. You will do whatever it takes carries with it doing everything. It carries with it a message that says, maybe I don't prioritize as well as I should. That I might burn myself out because everything is important and I have to do everything yesterday. So people have often said, I'm going to do whatever it takes as sort of a superpower thing. I think it could be a bit of kryptonite for you. I have seen this. And I have to say, God bless you, right? This is what you do every day. And doing whatever it takes in the crisis of COVID, like what other choice did you have? You have been on some frightening adrenaline overdrive. And because you're fixers, hey, I'm going to jump in. I'm going to make this better. I'm going to figure out how to do more work with fewer resources. I'm on this. But I want to share some tough love with you and say that what you're doing now, that kind of mindset is not sustainable and it will not get you to the other side. I've eliminated the word normal. I've eliminated the when it's over. I just call it the other side. So I want to offer you all some advice with the following caveat. I do not have a crystal ball. Shelley doesn't have a crystal ball. There are no crystal balls. But of this, I am really, really sure that when we get to the other side, the doing whatever it takes needs to actually take a back seat to leading with intention. I'm going to argue that you're not shooting to survive on the other side. I want you to set your sights higher. I believe you can and you need to. I believe that you can thrive. I believe that regardless of how challenging things have been, you have done heroic and remarkable things that are evidence of thriving. We just need to figure out how to bring that with us to the other side. So the nonprofit that navigates and thrives will have the following kinds of attributes: focus, discipline, a strong and engaged posse. It will try new things, and that organization will lead with its board. Okay? Focus, discipline, a strong and engaged posse, trying new things, and leading with your board. That's why the twin engine jet model has to kind of stay in your head as we keep going here. Now, you could listen to me and say, I think that's just fabulous advice, Joan, but I'm tired. I don't have a board that is engaged. Some of my donors are kind of demanding. Actually, I wish I had more donors. Is there any chance you could get a little more specific? Yeah, I'm going to get more specific. So I'm going to offer you 3 pieces of advice, some things you can do today to begin to lead with intention. I think you'll find them helpful. And here are the 3 things. And Joy, if you could toss them into the chat so we can go through them one by one. You know, I decided not to do slides. And the reason I decided not to do slides is not because I'm lazy. Actually, if you do slides, my face is about the size of a postage stamp. And I just don't think that's nearly as much fun. And then you can't see all the cool things around my bookcase. Okay, so here are the 3 things. You got to focus on growing your army of ambassadors. You've got to embrace creativity and collaboration. And you've got to build excitement about the destination. And I'm going to take them one at a time. Growing your army of ambassadors. I really want you to think about this one with me. Who am I talking about? Ambassadors, okay? First, your board, your staff, if you're lucky enough to have staff, but also your generous donors who absolutely love your organization. The people who love your organization, you need to keep them close. And you need to equip them with what they need to be vocal and visible ambassadors who can enthusiastically invite folks to know and do more for your organization. So what do they need? They need something to say. They need practice saying it. And they need folks to say it to. So they need stories. Stories are the foundational, like the core, like cell of a nonprofit. And I don't mean S-E-L-L, I mean C-E-L-L, right? The stories you tell about impact are the treasures you share. You have to begin to be really, really good at telling stories. And you've got to train your board and your donors to tell those stories. So you've got to begin by sharing them. Sharing stories is a singular important job for the staff of your nonprofit. Compelling, brief, short stories about impact that can be shared by your ambassadors across every imaginable platform, from Facebook to an email to a something they can use at a cocktail party we don't have anymore. They need stories. Secondly, you need to train them to tell the stories well. I like board meetings where 10 minutes of each board meeting is a storytelling practice. One person raises their hand and says, I want to give it a go. You workshop it, And then people around the Zoom call say, that was great. What I loved about it was what I wish was. It's an exercise, a muscle that needs to be exercised. And then the third thing is that you need people to say it too. And we often ask board members and others who are close to the organization to share their contacts. But there are lots of people within your organization that need to be contacted, who need to feel close to your organization. So it is time, and I've seen this was a treasure in the darkness of 2020. People started to reach out to their donors, their volunteers, to ask them how they were. And in so doing, to bring those people closer to the organization, because you think it wasn't going to come up that if I'm a donor to your organization and you call to check in how COVID has impacted me personally, that I'm not going to say, what's it been like? What's it been like for big brothers, big sisters? What's it been like for, for North Liberty City Council or Iowa Legal Aid? How have you managed? And I guarantee you that when you're asked that question, you impress the hell out of the person you're talking to. It's time with 2020 to invest in stewardship. And I have to tell you something, my equation of credible messenger plus compelling story equals new stakeholder. If you can get your credible messengers out telling stories, out sharing the heroics, amazing things happen. I have a client I worked with, a member of our leadership lab, runs a children's theater in Brooklyn. She just called one of her big donors to ask how he was doing. That was in April or May. They run a children's theater. You can imagine the challenges. Well, she was able to tell the donor that they clearly were having problems with earned ticket revenue that they were reliant on. But she was also able to say they're making a movie. And it was awesome and cool and innovative and creative. And you know what the guy said? I want to talk to my wife tonight. Would you call me at like 10 o'clock tomorrow morning? We want to be of help. She didn't make an ask. She called at 10 o'clock the next morning like a good ED, and she got a $100,000 gift. Unsolicited, unrestricted. This is what happens when you continue to invite your ambassadors closer and closer. And you're going to need that posse on the other side to help you build and grow your sphere of influence. So that's the first one. Grow your army of ambassadors. The next one is embrace creativity and collaboration. I guarantee you I could actually ask each of you to raise your hand and tell me something you did that you did not think you could do in 2020. You went out on a limb, you tried things. I often tell the story of my friend, client, Drew Dyson, who runs a senior resource center in Princeton, New Jersey. They had to close the senior resource center, of course. But they run this incredible program called the Evergreen Forum with these remarkable classes, like, women directors of the 20th century. And they're run by instructors, often from the Princeton area, retired or currently still engaged, maybe part-time. Well, what did he do? He said, well, what if we were to get college volunteers who are home and ask them to help us move everything virtual? And those college volunteers taught instructors how to put their classes online, and more challenging, worked with seniors to get them to use Zoom. Now, having helped my mother use her Kindle, I know that these volunteers were doing yeoman's work. He had more registrations for the Evergreen Forum than he ever had. He reached people outside of the Princeton area, and he reached people for whom the senior center is inaccessible. It was a game changer for the resource center. That's what it's about. And I'm here to say that trying new things is not something the nonprofit sector loves to do. Sometimes we play it way too safe. We're afraid of, pissing off donors. We're afraid our boards are risk averse. They're in the monitor and oversight business. They're not in the strategy and innovation business, not nearly enough. And you might have to let go of your type A control stuff because a pilot might not go perfectly. And I can't give you better examples than the ones that Shelley talked about collaboration, which, by the way, is a different kind of innovation. It's a different kind of being nimble. The Food with Love program, completely nimble, all about collaboration, right? Everybody was involved, and CFJC oversaw the distributions, ensuring that the funds raised directly supported the project. Now, they also in the spring, and this is the power of community foundations, awarded like $165,000 in emergency funding to 35 local nonprofit organizations. They changed their process, right? They were nimble, made sure that the grant application was easy, and permitted uses of funds were broadened. That's what we do in hard times. But it's a muscle we have to exercise when we get to the other side. And we have to actually educate our boards and market innovation and nimble and piloting. Because it's not just something we did to dig out. It's something that the nonprofits should always have been doing. And we now have proof of concept. The last piece is building excitement about the destination. So we have growing your army of the ambassadors, embracing creativity and collaboration, and this last one, building excitement about the destination. So many nonprofits struggled this year, and their messaging was about help, save. We don't have the resources we need to grow, to match the exponential need. And that wasn't untrue, but there's a different framing. And as we see that framing work, we're going to see more and more possibility. So I want you to imagine a car full of kids driving 6 hours to Disney World. And they're bickering, right? They're shooting rubber bands at each other. One of them's getting car sick. And you could tell them all to shut the heck up. You can, assure Maria, no, you're not going to throw up in your backpack. Don't worry about it. Or you can start a different conversation and you can say, what's the first ride you're going to go on when you get to Disney World? Right? What was the ride you most loved last time we went? And all of a sudden, the conversation isn't about the sort of the BS in the car, is it? It's about the excitement about the destination. And that's what you need to learn to do. You need.
Oh, well, then you're on.
That's what you need
Clear.
to learn about. If everybody could mute, that would be great. I do actually want to hear from people, but I probably should zoom through my through the rest of my thoughts here. This is what you need to do with your stakeholders, all of these people, these ambassadors, right now. Instead of asking someone to help you dig out of the ditch, I want you to paint a picture of what is possible. When where you want the organization to go, the kind of impact you can have when you get to the other side. Because if you can build that for me as a board member or as a generous donor, I'm like, yeah, I want to go there. I want to go there. And if I'm actually ignited about let's say it's point B and I'm at point A, I'm like, I am so all over point B. How can I help you get to point B? Well, the easy answer is, right now I'm here at point A and I need funding to bridge where I am now to point B. I want to get there and I need your support to be a bridge. To be a bridge, right? That's different from save me, and it's different from I'm in a ditch. Do you have some kind of thing that can get my truck out of a ditch? Right? Some people really like to come in on a white horse and save the day. There are donors like that for sure. But if I'm going to save the day, I want to know where the car is going to go when I help you get it out of the ditch. That's what's key. That's what's key. So start to get your board engaged in conversations that are not about cash flow. Mix and match them. They will want to talk cash flow because they're all about oversight and governance. But if you don't get that, if you don't get their plane up at a higher altitude to start to really be ignited by the possibilities, you'll have a missed opportunity. And by the way, there are two different kinds of activities in the world of nonprofits. There are the kinds of activities that take gas out of your tank, and they're the kind that actually refuel you. And talking about possibilities and opportunities are refueling activities. And staring at the cash flow and deciding which vendor to pay and which vendor maybe you won't take their call right away. Those are depleting activities. So we want to actually really think about making sure that we're doing the day-to-day stuff, but that we're not missing shaping the future of the organization so that we can engage your ambassadors in talking about that possibility and asking people, inviting them to know more, to do more about the possibility so that they want to help you bridge from where you are now to where you want to be. So I have learned this year something that, or was affirmed for me, something that I always knew, that what you do is heroic, right? We can't rely on government to solve the ills of society. It's actually why the nonprofit sector was started, because we can't and we shouldn't. And because it puts the power in the hands of the people to get out of the stands and onto the field, to take an active role in using their voices to repair the world. And like I said, I find leaders in my very own backyard. And when I see those things, when I see them, what I see are fierce advocates for what is fair. I see people who just simply can't sit idly by. I see people who are dripping with empathy, which, by the way, we're in seemingly in relatively short supply here in this country of ours. I see people who are fixers, and I see people who are problem solvers. And those things in their aggregate, in and wrapped up in a mission that is important, that's filling a gap in our society, that's advocating and providing services, that's leadership. So I just want to close by saying I actually know a lot about who you are. Maybe we don't know each other personally, but I've been a colleague, executive director of yours. I've been a board colleague. Maybe some of you have felt like I think of you as fellow staff members. That your board members I worked to recruit. So I've never been to Iowa City, and I hope to go there sometime. And I hope to meet some of you in real life, post-COVID, handshaking, thanking you in real time. Because what I know about nonprofit leaders is that, and I see it right here, right? You educate our young people. You deliver meals. You work to cure illnesses and fight the stigma associated with them. You fight for equality for women, for people of color, for LGBT folks, provide beds to the homeless, put battered women back on their feet. You're storytellers who don't allow us to forget. You protect your lands. You navigate a complex world for those who are new here. As I saw you remind society of the power of religion and remind us of the power of deep faith. And you bring music and theater and dance to this rather ugly world of ours. And when doing all of this, you make us think, you make us feel, and you lift us up. That's what you do. You lift us up. And you stand shoulder to shoulder with about 12 million people who head to work every day at a nonprofit, each of you doing your part to repair the world. And you also stand shoulder to shoulder with over 60 million people who give of their time to causes that they care about as volunteers or donors. You are part of a remarkable tribe that in Johnson County is brought together by the Community Foundation. But you are part of a remarkable tribe, and how lucky I am to spend time with you this morning. Oh, and one last thing. I actually think that nonprofit work can be pretty thankless. So I think I'll just end and let's take some questions, but I'll end with two simple words I don't think you hear often enough. Thank you.
That was so great, Joan. You've delivered everything that I had hoped you might be able to. You know, when we talk about doing things differently, having you come here virtually to us was something, you know, far beyond my hopes that we would be able to do. And so I'm just so grateful for you having been here to share your wisdom. And you also mentioned how you've been in these shoes. I represent one person who works in this nonprofit world, but you have been my partner. You've offered words of wisdom, whether I was looking for advice, becoming a new executive director, or being a board member of a foundation. Your words of wisdom have really resonated. So it's definitely reciprocal. When you've been where we are, we see you as a partner from afar. So while we have not met, you have been along my personal nonprofit journey all along the way.
Well,
so thank you.
Oh, thank you. And I think also too, I just wanted to say, what's made this year hard is it's been really hard to see the joy and the privilege of your work. And that's a refueling activity too. So I would offer some additional advice is just as you close out the year and you think about the people you supported, the work that you did, the lives that you touched, you know, don't take it for granted by being so caught up in the, you know, gee, I didn't get these 15 things done. One of the things I talk often about is if you're having trouble, you know, if you feel like your tank is out of gas, go touch the work or go talk to somebody who's been a client or who's benefited from the work that you do. And it's actually the best antidote to burnout I can think of.
So true. We've got a few people kind of commenting. Susan Brennan shared that someone told her to not let a good crisis go to waste. And this time has really taught us sort of specifically that message for sure. And your message about reconnecting with donors, not because they're givers to your organization, but because you care about them and want them and their families to be safe and healthy.
I also think too, and I see some questions which I can read them and then just address them is I think one of the things that people forget, and certainly board members I think have to be sort of educated about this, is that if I hear about the work of your organization and pick any of these in this group today, it gives me hope, right? It's like, oh, you're doing really important work. I'm so glad you are. And to be able to help you do that work, it actually provides me with a sense of meaning and purpose. And I don't think board members really get that. You know, that whole notion of like fundraising or asking people to do something as if it's some kind of an imposition or I have to be selling them a ticket to something. No, you don't. No, look, when the gift that I get by donating to a cause is a big shot of hope and meaning and purpose. I feel like I'm on the field with you, and I don't want to sit in the stands. So I really think that that's an important thing to be thinking about when you think about talking to your board members. I remember when I first got to GLAAD, I was hired with no nonprofit fundraising experience, like none. Like, leave it to a board to hire a nonprofit executive director for a failing organization who had no nonprofit experience. I mean, come on. But they saw attributes in me that made that they were right to see that made me a very good fundraiser. And my development director said to me, hey, if it helps you in any way, because I know you're kind of a pleaser, it makes people feel really good to give to causes they care about. Well, I didn't need to hear anything else but that. And I became a very enthusiastic fundraiser. So there's a couple of questions here. Jim Kringland, practicing storytelling. Maybe I should ask staff to take turns doing this even internally at our weekly meetings. Oh, yes, Jim Kringland, that's exactly what you should do, right? And in fact, I used to do something called cocktail party sound bites every other week. And I would ask my staff members to submit them to me. And I would pick 3 of them. And I would then send those out to my board because I knew they'd be at cocktail parties back in the day when we had those. And it actually honed the muscle of the staff members to capture the story well so that I could easily send it out. And people would say, why didn't you include my story this week, Joan? And I'd say, because it needed work and here's how, and they'd get better and better at it. I think the other thing is, since 1997, we have video, we have audio, we have just a skajillion ways to be able to actually promote and tell these stories. And they don't have to be perfect, right? You grab your beautiful, I have a brand new iPhone 12. The video is awesome, right? You can interview a client and you can give it to a board member and say, post it on Facebook. Don't ask for money, just say, I'm proud to be on the board of XYZ organization. Here's a video of something that's happening. I'm so proud, and here's how you can learn more, right? So yes, practice at your staff meetings and your board meetings. And actually reframe how you think about board meetings in terms of, if you've been in this situation where you feel like you're constantly nagging your board members to go, don't you know somebody who's rich, or somebody who lives next door to somebody who's rich? And why aren't you out asking for people for money? Why don't you go to them and say, I've really been thinking about it. I think that you need some tools to be really good ambassadors. I think we should talk about what those tools are. I think one of those tools might be stories and the practicing of storytelling. And I use my equation: credible messenger plus compelling story equals new stakeholder. If you can reframe board service as ambassadorship, as champions, as people who are in the invitation business of inviting people to know and do more, you might actually get them to the point where, if they're stewarding donors, you might say, hey, you did such a good job of stewarding Mary Horst this year. Would you like to actually secure her renewal? Or actually, she got a big new job, so maybe you could ask her to upgrade. That's how it works. Lyle Muller asks, do you have concerns about donors and volunteers using 2021 as a reason to kick back and exhale or take a break because of how they dealt with 2020? No, I don't. I don't. I mean, there probably are donors that decide to take breaks. But I think that for the most part, if you keep your donors close and you continue to fuel them with the stories, if you build excitement about the destination, they're going to want to go there with you. They're going to be those kids in the backseat of the car that are going to say, are we there yet? And how can I make us get there faster? So I don't. And I also think, as somebody said earlier, the light at the end of the tunnel may not be an oncoming train, and there may be hope, but maybe hope and inspiration in a way that there wasn't through the dark days of 2020. So you just have to keep inviting them to participate, knowing that it will bring meaning and purpose to them. Yes, some people will say no. Some people will have lost their jobs. since that time. And maybe that means they could be a volunteer. I mean, you have to think really creatively and come from this with a mindset of abundance rather than scarcity. The same is also true with board service. I had a lot of people ask me, should we put board recruitment on hold? Hell no, right? People aren't going to the movies. They're not going bowling, right? They're home. They have time on their hands. And they want to be of value in this world. They'd like to help fix it. It's pretty broken. Other questions? I'm happy to push back on me, to disagree with me. That's good. I always like that too.
You've covered a lot of ground for us today, Joan. It's been such a delight. So if there are any other questions, feel free to go ahead and put those in the chat. But I think we will our cups have runneth over with your good pieces of wisdom, and I think we will move on to our closing.
So I wanted to just actually shamelessly promote. One thing I just want to say is, and you're very welcome, I appreciate the thanks. This is the newest edition of my book. It's in paperback. It's been, I finished binging Schitt's Creek in March, and I thought, what could I do now? And I decided to rewrite a good portion of my book. And Cindy from my team hustled with my publisher to get it out by Christmas. And so it's cheaper. It has 2 new chapters. One is about why boards matter, which may in fact be the most valuable reason to own the book, and perhaps the most valuable reason to think about, if you were going to think about giving your board members a holiday gift, this would be a very good option. It's also cheaper. There's also a chapter about small nonprofits. They have a very unique gestalt, as many of you who run them do know. And so they have unique powers to be nimble, and they have unique challenges as well. And then the first book that I wrote largely used my stories as vehicles for lessons, but you're going to meet a whole host of characters that I have met over the last couple of years. You will see yourself in them. But at the end of the day, what I wanted to do was I wanted to get a book out by the holidays so that people would have the opportunity to grab onto some kind of a navigation tool for 2020. It's called a guide for a reason. So I really do hope that you can pre-order it now. They come out it's available on the 22nd of December. So anyway, I'm not pitching it because selling books is like the big thing I want to do in my life, but I just feel like a lot of people would benefit from having a bit of a sort of nonprofit GPS going into 2021. So
thanks, Joan. And boy, to my nonprofit friends and those who there are many people who are interested in getting that book. Wouldn't a virtual book club discussion regarding her new book be a great way to kick off the new year? So Ellie and Shirley, I think we'll figure out a way to make that happen.
So you can learn more about the book. You can pre-order it on Amazon, and also you can learn more about the book at book.joangary.com.
Thanks so much, Joan. Such a pleasure to have you with us today.
Well, and again, pleasure to spend some time with you this morning. And thank you very much for the work that you do. Thank you for prevailing in 2020. You had all the right attributes to make it work. And I do think take the lessons into 2021. Fix some of the things that probably your organization needed to fix anyway. And I think that the year will be a good one for you. So I'm wishing you whatever holidays look like at your house this year, wishing you happy ones. But in the meantime, stay healthy and stay safe. And thank you so much for the opportunity this morning.
Oh, thank you, Joan. It's been our pleasure.
All right. Take good care.
Bye. Thank you. So my job now is to be the closer after Joan Gary. So that's a really challenging job, I know. So I'm going to keep it very simple. to end out our 20th anniversary with a simple round of heartfelt thank yous. To our donors and volunteers, thank you for allowing us to be your partner in giving to uplift the needs of others and support Johnson County over the past 20 years. No matter your charitable interest, there's a place for everyone at the Community Foundation. It's our sincere honor to help you find unique and meaningful ways to support the causes and communities that you love. To our board of directors, both past and present, thank you for sharing your time, your talents, and your treasures with us. The investment you've made in service to your community through your leadership has allowed us to be the organization that we are today and position us to deliver the very best service to Johnson County for years to come. And as we reach this milestone, I must take a moment to shine a specific spotlight on one particular board member, our Treasurer Emeritus, Dean Price. As a CPA, Dean has been the trusted accounting and tax advisor to countless individuals, families, and businesses over the years. And he's discovered along the way that the Community Foundation was a perfect match for his clients who wanted to make an impact with their charitable giving, and has been our organization's biggest champion and cheerleader ever since. Dean has served on the Community Foundation's board as our Treasurer Emeritus standing position for over 15 years, sharing his expertise, his sage advice, and always sharing a good story or two along the way. Dean, thank you in particular for your wonderful service to the Community Foundation. We just love you. And to our nonprofit organizations, simply put, without you, our work would not be possible. We are here for you forever to be your greatest advocate and ally. With every grant application you submit, we see just a piece of the wonderful contribution you are making to make Johnson County the very best place to live, give, work, and play. We thank you. And a thank you to the staff, my fellow Community Foundation staff members, Shirley Fleeler and Ellie Moore. Next year, Shirley Fleeler, our Chief Financial Officer, will celebrate her 15th anniversary with us. So as a measure of Dean Price's longevity, he and former board member Bill Berger interviewed and hired Shirley for her first position. Another excellent decision made by Dean Price some time ago. Shirley's hard work and caring spirit touches every aspect of our work, and she too has played a significant role in helping us reach our 20th anniversary milestone. Thank you, Shirley. We love you. And Ellie Moore, who is our Director of Grant Making and Strategic Communication, actually joined the Community Foundation on June 1st. In the midst of our remote working and also in the middle of our Emergency Response Fund granting program. Ellie got right to work and is already making significant advancements in our granting and communication programs. In just a few days, Ellie will be earning her master's degree in philanthropic studies from Indiana University Lilly School of Philanthropy, and we could not be more proud of her and her contributions to CFJC. So congratulations and thank you, Ellie. Today's program actually coincides with the release of our 20th anniversary annual report, which we have titled A Celebration of the Power of Yes. There are more wonderful stories here, such as the nearly $200,000 of emergency response grants and our organization's commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion within our community and within our organization by the establishment of the Inclusive Johnson County Fund. This report is available online, and of course we have plenty of hard copies that we can mail out as well, but I hope that you will find the stories of the work of the Community Foundation in our annual report this year uplifting and helpful. And so to close, just on behalf of the Community Foundation board and staff, thank you for saying yes to allowing us to be your partner in philanthropy. It's been our honor to connect those who care with those who need in our community for the past 20 years, and we look forward to many, many more. Thank you.